Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We are back in the building. It's me, it's Mikey and Doogie after an extremely successful night of hate watching in the Champions League last night. We're recording this on a Thursday. It could be another successful night of hate watching if Liverpool crash out against Atalanta. Either that or it could be a heartbreaking Wanda comeback. How are you feeling after last night's results?
I'm a great disciple of English teams out.
Get them gone
as soon as possible. For possibly 4 English teams to be out of Europe before May is quite something. It's great. It's good for European football, isn't it?
It is.
I think I genuinely if England got the coefficient this year, it would just be it would be a bad way to start. I think the new Champions League format. I'm genuinely happy that Dortmund and Leipzig are probably going to get in the Champions League next season now. In Italy, that means Bologna's chances of getting into the Champions League are a lot higher too if they keep the coefficient. Are they completely?
90% there.
Without kind of trolling, I think it is actually good. It is actually a good thing. And with my Man United fan hat on, it's great for all the English clubs to be out. Who knows? May have jinxed that. Maybe Liverpool will be through by now. But yeah.
What do you make of it, Dukes?
It was chaotic, wasn't it? It was a lot of fun. I thought particularly Tuesday night's game between Barcelona and PSG, that was probably my favourite. I think Real Madrid, Man City slightly dragged at points, to be honest, but amazing storyline to see Man City knocked out on penalties in front of their own fans. They didn't do a lot wrong. We'll get on to Arsenal and Bayern Munich in due course, I think, during the course of this episode, because we are ranking sides throughout Europe this season. But yeah, drama-filled. As I'm kind of with you guys, I've always been more of a fan of other leagues in Europe getting their credit as well, rather than just being the Premier League's the best in the world. So it's a satisfying week for, Premier League being put in its place slightly.
Don't get this sort of narrative of, you're English, you want the English teams to do well. Get them out. Get them gone. I want to see them struggling. I want to see them failing. Honestly,
I think because you guys have rivalries, obviously, with loads of those teams. I personally like seeing them go quite far because I just don't have a dog in the fight as a Sunderland fan. But as a United fan, I can see where you both want all of them out.
Well, it kind of does link in nicely to today's episode, doesn't it? Because as you can see from the title, we're doing 10 best clubs in Europe this season ranked. Yeah. So what we've done is we've all gone away and produced what we believe is our top 10 list. We're then going to run through 10 through to 1, see how many we've got in the same order, see what differences we've got. Are we going to have to come up with a definitive 10, or are we just kind of going to debate and hammer each other's opinion?
Maybe we leave it up to the people,
Yeah, maybe just debate it out.
See what people think.
All right, let's start at 10. Who's everybody got? Should we just each throw the name out first?
Yeah, throw them. Okay, I went Borussia Dortmund.
Okay.
Borussia Dortmund not in my top 10.
Ooh, okay. I went PSV Eindhoven.
I went PSV Eindhoven.
Really?
Nice.
Okay.
Why don't you guys pick off then?
I just think their record speaks for itself. I think only Internazionale. No, in fact, they've got the best scoring record in Europe's top 7 leagues. Better than Inter, better than Leverkusen. They won 17 games in a row up until January. That's the joint best record in Dutch football history, which they actually set in 1988 when they won the European Cup. It's just been really nice seeing the Peter Bosz revival there. Luke de Jong, 26 goals and 12 assists. I think what's let them down, and the reason why they're not higher on this list, is because they, did let themselves down, I think, a bit in the cup competitions, getting knocked out by Feyenoord in the KNVB Cup. I think they were a bit unfortunate actually to go out to Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League. I think they gave a really good account of themselves in the last 16, came through that group with Arsenal. Bakayoko, huge talent as well. A number of standout performances. You look at Serginho Dest's kind of revival there too. Malik Tillman on loan from Bayern Munich. I just think it's been great, and that they haven't won the Eredivisie since 2018. I think it's just a great achievement from them. Yes, the Eredivisie weaker this year with Ajax dropping off, but Feyenoord are not, still have Arne Slot in place. They're still a very decent team in second place. AZ Alkmaar, I think, they're 4th at the moment, but maybe not the strongest Eredivisie season, but they were still so dominant for so long in this campaign.
Still only lost one game, man.
Still only lost one game. I think there's 4 games left. They just need to win the next one, I think, to basically ensure that they've won the league. So yeah, that's the thing. Like, even despite their record, like Feyenoord have still had like a really good season. And are, if the Eredivisie was really that bad, then PSV would have won the league like a few weeks ago, but they still haven't secured the title. So yeah, I think it's been massively impressive from them.
Yeah, I've also gone PSV. I think if we just do the 10 biggest clubs here, then I think
it's got to be on this season.
We are gonna really just end up with a list that's very sort of mundane. So I think picking a team from outside of the traditional Europe top 5 leagues adds value a little bit to it, because I think otherwise these teams never get talked about. I was actually kind of close to putting Sporting as well, who have had an absolutely superb season, 7 points clear at the top of the Portuguese top tier, playing the football that Ruben Amorim's playing with players like Victor Gyökeres. I think they are a contender, but I've gone PSV. I think same reasons as Mikey. I think that unbeaten record, the winning run they went on, still only lost one game, to have scored 95 goals in domestic league play is a joke. I mean, Luke de Jong's put up 38 goal involvements. The guy, I think, has the 4th most goal involvements of any player in Europe this season, behind Kane, Mbappe, and maybe Victor Gyökeres. It's ridiculous. These guys have been fantastic, and I know they went out to Dortmund, who you've got at 10, and I haven't even got in my list. But I think if we were to do all of these teams on one-off games, then the kind of list might be a little bit skewed. I think they need their flowers. I think that he's done an absolutely sensational job, and to be at this stage of the season with only one loss means you've got to be in the top 10, I think.
Fair enough. I mean, I really didn't want to put Dortmund in, if that makes sense, and I probably should have put Sporting. I kind of regret not putting Sporting, to be totally honest. But
already regretting your choices.
I am regretting
early in the video.
I am regretting early in the video. I'm slightly overthinking maybe the 10th spot, but at the same time, Dortmund, it has been a bit of a disaster in the league. I think they're on track for 65 points, which should be their 2nd lowest tally of the last 5 seasons. They've been saved by their own performance and other German clubs' performance in Europe in terms of making the Champions League. They haven't missed out in the Champions League since 2014-15, which I think was Jurgen Klopp's final year.
And a slightly fortunate run as well.
And a run there. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, when you're 2-0 down against Atletico Madrid within 30 minutes of the quarter-final, you come through to win that tie. Yeah, I think that's a really impressive result.
Also came through the group of death as well, topped the group of death.
Yeah,
but it's an Atletico team. I haven't even got Atletico in my top 10. It's an Atletico team that I think on the road this season in La Liga have taken 18 points.
Yeah,
one of the worst records of any team in Spain on the road. Have a horrendous record away from home in Europe.
But at home, to not get
not bagging on them.
Soft.
Yeah, but to not get absolutely smashed when you're already 2-0 down, to stay in that tie.
Yeah, no,
I've only got them 10th. 10th. And also making, Champions League semi-finals for the first time since 2012-13. I think most people expect them to lose to PSG, but they drew with them at home. I think they lost with them in the Parc des Princes in the first game. But yeah, I mean, respect to them for sort of rescuing what looked like a season that was going to be completely forgettable. And also, their recent form in Europe has been dreadful, really. Losing to Chelsea last year, I think in the last 16. I think they got smashed by Rangers in the Europa League the year before that. They haven't been a European force, so to get back to the semi-finals, I just thought was enough for 10th place.
Yep, okay. Moving up to 9th then, are we?
Do you want to start, Joe, this time?
I've got Bayern Munich in 9th.
Ooh.
I feel like that's quite low.
That's quite low. I've got Stuttgart.
Stuttgart were in my sort of 11th, 12th spot.
Really? I think Stuttgart have to be in the top 10. I think Stuttgart have to be there.
I understand the narrative. And
they're level on points with Bayern.
And I would agree. I think, look, the season that Hoeneß has been able to produce here, taking them from, what did he take? I think he actually took over when they were in the playoff, didn't he?
He took over when they were.
April, wasn't it,
I think he took over when they were lower than the playoff, got them into the playoff spot,
and they survived. And obviously now they are 3rd in the league, and I think clearly they have had a spectacular season. But I was kind of between them and one other team in my list for that sort of overachieving spark out of nothing side that I wanted to give a mention to. Whereas Bayern Munich, I understand, domestically it has been an extremely disappointing season. There's no denying that. But I think to overcome Manchester City in the way they did in the Champions League, and yes, they've been...
Arsenal,
the way they did in the Champions League, but the way that the league has gone, I don't know, they've still put up the most XG of any side. They've still got the second best expected goals against. If you're doing it
most
by expected points,
they
would be top of the league. Yes, it hasn't gone the way that they wanted it to, and it's been a crap season in the league. But the performances haven't necessarily always matched the results. There have been some performances where they definitely should have won the game and have kind of capitulated. I thought the performance against Arsenal midweek was absolutely sensational. Like they limited Arsenal in that second half to absolutely nothing. And this is a Bayern Munich team that's playing Eric Dyer at centre-back. Like, no offence to Eric Dyer, but I was not expecting to see him coming out as man of the match in Champions League quarterfinals at the start of the season playing for Bayern Munich. Like, I think they've got to be in there, but I don't know whether I'd have them too much higher than ninth, just because it's been so disappointing in a domestic sense. I
actually do have them higher on this list. We'll get onto them. We'll get onto them later. But
how much higher have you two got them then?
I mean, I've got them a few places higher. They're
really?
not in my top 5, but
I had them 5th.
Yeah, okay. I feel like I maybe argued a little bit for you guys there, like in terms of some of the underlying numbers. But I don't know. It's just that I would have had them higher if it wasn't such disappointment. And I think like Tuchel leaving.
I think with all these clubs, like, you can find light and shade in all their.
It's mainly shade though for Bayern, isn't it?
I think most of their fans are really, really fed up with how their season's gone. Like, pretty perplexed with why they haven't been able to perform in the league to the level they have in the Champions League. But then at the same time, with the season on the line, having lost against Lazio in the first leg in the last 16, they came through that. Huge pressure on Tuchel. There was supposedly talk he was going to be fired after that game if that didn't go to plan. And then they took on Arsenal at the peak of their powers. They hadn't lost to Villa at that stage. And yes, they rode their luck slightly at the Emirates, but on the basis of the two games, I don't think any Arsenal fan can really have any complaints. I think they got slightly put in their place by a side that aren't even at their best, that couldn't have away fans in their home stadium, in the away game. Yep. And then in the home game, they were missing Davies, they were missing Gnabry, they were missing Coman. Sane was just coming back from injury as well, and they kind of schooled them. So I had them higher, but I can see why you can make a case for 9th. The club I had in 9th was actually Barcelona.
Not in my top 10.
Neither me.
Really?
Not made it.
I don't think the season's been as bad as people have made out, to be totally honest. I know they scraped through in the Champions League in terms of their group and then beat Napoli in quite convincing fashion, but I think they were really close, to be honest, to beating PSG. Yeah. If that red card for Araujo, they looked very comfortable in that game. They were 4-2 up on aggregate, and of course they get blitzed in the second half. Huge defensive errors from Cancelo. Jules Koundé didn't play particularly well either. Araujo is already off the pitch. Their whole issue this season, I think, stems from a really poor decision to replace Sergio Busquets with Oriol Romeo. I don't know how they thought they were going to get away with that. And then there's been key injuries around the rest of the front line as well. Key injuries in the midfield as well. And then I think they also sold themselves short in the summer, but they had to do this. But I think Xavi's recovery from announcing his resignation, going 12 games unbeaten, and then this was their first defeat, I think deserves some credit.
I mean, that speaks volumes though, man. I think that speaks volumes of like some of the group he's like dealing with there, Xavi, that like they've turned up when the pressure's off them. Do you know what I mean?
It's difficult to say without
when Xavi needed them to be bailing him out, they were nowhere to be seen, these guys.
They had a bad January. They had a really bad January. I mean, they lost in the Copa del Rey to Athletic Club. They got knocked out in the Super Cup as well. And these Super Cups mean so much more in other countries. Like the Community Shield's basically a joke in England. But the Super Copa and the Super Cup are big deals in Spain.
Especially now that it's a tournament that's being held abroad. And
exactly, it's got a whole different element to it. But I just don't think they've been as bad as people made out. They were my dark horses to go deep in the Champions League. Can Barcelona really be a dark horse? But I think they showed a really good account for themselves in Paris, to be honest, with a young side, with a 17-year-old, with a 16-year-old, young players coming through. I think it's been an okay season.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I just think the decision to take Yamal off.
But then who do you take off?
I mean, in hindsight's a wonderful thing, but Lewandowski did not offer enough in the second half for me. I know
he was
really
a disgrace.
He's
like, you need a focal point. You need a focal point.
You need but
when you're down to 10.
When you're down to 10, I know, but then
he doesn't press. He doesn't move off the ball. His work rate was an absolute disgrace.
But he had a great game in Paris, to be fair, holding up the ball and playing others in. Like Rafinha was having the tie of his life. He'd never scored in the Champions League.
Of course, you don't take Rafinha off. I would have maybe. I'm obviously not a manager, but I would have taken off Lewandowski and had Yamal and Rafinha as too wide, too wide, split forwards. I think Lewandowski's been, just been wildly inconsistent this season. To be honest, if Barca make it through that tie, and again, it hinges a lot on the red card and all this and that, the other, they probably do make my top 10. But I think yes, the reaction, the last 3 months in the league has been good. El Clasico is tonight. That's make or break, really. I think if Barca don't win El Clasico, and you probably don't expect them to now, I think that probably does seal Xavi's fate, that he's probably definitely going to leave the club in the summer. I think if they say
there's a chance he could stay.
He's already saying he's not changing his mind. I think the club just want him to stay.
Yeah, but
he's not going to change his mind. He's been burnt. I think those players have let him down big time.
I just think you never know with Barca. I think you never know with Barca. But he probably will. Yeah, I still expect him to leave. But I think there's still a small chance.
Behind the scenes, and those players have let him down big time. Some of the signings in the summer are an absolute disgrace. Like the Romeo signing. I mean, it's horrifying, man.
But is he really of the level expected to be a starter for Barcelona? I think it was just a poor use of funds. And
That's what I mean.
Yeah, sure. So, but that doesn't feel like the players have let him down. I feel like that's poor recruitment, which has been their issue for so long. I think, you look at the issues going forward. They spent £50 million on Lewandowski. He's going to be 36 in August. Gundogan's already 33. Like, these players weren't signed for 2-3 years' time. They were signed for now. And you look at Gundogan's reaction to going out in midweek, and Xavi embarrassed himself as well with all the talk about the red card. It's a clear red card, and just have some humility. And I know that you're trying to
also getting yourself sent off.
Yeah, kicking a camera hoarding.
It was just a series of head losses. Like the Araujo one, I don't think you can actually be too hard. It was an error, but it wasn't. It wasn't him losing his head. But following that and following Xavi getting sent off, it was just a series of head losses from a Barcelona perspective. Even like Joao Cancelo, one of your most senior players, like just putting in a really poor display, giving away the penalty. I think this is the thing with Barca over the last few years in general. It's like in big moments they do lose their heads.
Who did you have in mind, Mikey?
I had Stuttgart.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they have to be in there. Like they're level on points with Bayern Munich. Like they could finish second in the Bundesliga. I think they've got Leverkusen. I think they still have to play. They do still have to play Leverkusen, because Leverkusen still. It may well be this weekend or next weekend. I know Leverkusen are playing Dortmund. Leverkusen are playing Dortmund this weekend, and then Stuttgart next weekend. But they've got the same XG as Leverkusen, which is the joint 7th best in Europe's top 5 leagues. Given that they were, they looked almost certain to go down, in kind of February last year. That is just a remarkable achievement from Sebastian Hoeneß. 64% win percentage since taking over last April. I think if he hadn't signed a new contract with them until 2027, then I think there would be way more noise. There would have been way more noise around him as a potential successor to Thomas Tuchel, given he's the nephew of Uli Hoeneß, given that he, managed the Bayern Munich reserve side before going to Hoffenheim. I think, he's just done a remarkable job, and to blood so many, new signings so well from last summer, given that Sosa left, given that Mavropanos left, given that Endo left.
Well, yeah.
Like you lost, you really lost a spine of the team there. And obviously Serhou Guirassy has been in amazing form. Dennis Undav has been in amazing form. I think Guirassy is still the second top scorer in Europe's top 5 leagues after Harry Kane, which, given that he's played fewer minutes than anyone else in the top 10 goal scorers, is remarkable. He's got a better goals to game ratio than Kylian Mbappe, playing in a much tougher league, in a much less star-studded side. I just think that speaks volumes about the style of play that Sebastian Hoeneß has been able to implement at Stuttgart in a really short space of time. So I think they just had to be. They were a shoo-in for me.
Yeah, I left them out. Do you have them in there? No, I don't either. I had them in my next slot. Should we move on to 8? You happy to move on to 8?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
I had Stuttgart / Girona.
Oh.
And I've sided with Girona.
Really? You guys have gone way more down the route of who's had the best season relative to their ability, which I kind of get, whereas I did very much who's the best teams.
But I just think if you put Stuttgart up against, I don't know. I think if you put Stuttgart up against, say, a Barca over 2 legs, on the basis of their performances this season, I would fancy Stuttgart to give them a go. Like I would.
I might give it a go. I don't think I had PSG in 8th, and I can't see Stuttgart beating PSG.
Like I think that if we're talking about Stuttgart season, we've got to have
They've beaten Leipzig and Dortmund this season.
We've got to have some words for Girona's season as well, who have just been absolutely magnificent in La Liga. I mean, we could talk about Stuttgart coming, from that playoff last season. 2 years ago, Girona were in the second tier. Like, when Michel took them over, like, they were battling it right down in the doldrums. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, was it? It's like a couple of decades ago that they're like a regional team, effectively. So, like, the rise obviously partly helped by the City Group.
Massively.
Massively helped by the City Group. I think it has to be spoken about comparatively to the likes of Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Real Madrid this season. Like, they've beaten Barcelona away and stuck 4 on them. Like, these are massive moments for a team that, a little bit like Stuttgart, Stuttgart sold Endo. You could argue that Romeo was potentially Girona's best player last season in that deep line midfield role. This season, obviously, other players have really, really come to the fore. You think of the likes of Savio, who has just been excellent, and there is still that chat that he might, kind of go to Manchester City this summer if they can agree that deal. But they've just got top to bottom, a bit like Man City, like a La Masia theme running through them. I think the sporting director is ex-La Masia. I think Michel kind of plays in that sort of vague-ish La Masia format, doesn't he?
Front-footed,
and that all stems from Manchester City's ownership, doesn't it? Really, when you look at how Man City set up with Chiqui in there and Soriano, clearly this kind of stuff has fed down and bled into teams like Girona, who are, smashing it in La Liga for a team of their size with a catchment area that they're having to compete with Barcelona in. I think that if we're talking about Stuttgart being in there, we've got to talk about Girona. And then for me, it was a 50-50 split. Either one of these two could go in there, and I went down the Spanish route.
I think for Stuttgart, for me, what wins out, because I was considering Girona as well, I think it's slight recency bias. It's just the fact that Stuttgart...
form recently.
They're unbeaten since January. I think they've only dropped 4 points in that time. So I just think in terms of form across the season, I've just been more impressed by Stuttgart, whereas like in January, I was pretty convinced that Girona were going to finish this season second and were going to actually give Real Madrid a run for their money, but they have dropped off, and that's fine. But I just feel like Stuttgart have operated at a probably a more consistent level.
Yeah, maybe you haven't had the same level of results in the bigger games as Stuttgart have as well.
So you haven't got Girona or Stuttgart in there?
Didn't have them in there.
So who have you got at 8?
At 8, I had PSG.
Wow, that's high. That's high. I mean, that's low.
Really?
For PSG?
Yeah, man.
I've got PSG in 8th as well, actually.
Yeah, I
don't
think
a treble.
They are.
I mean, a domestic league that I think is people criticise Ligue 1, but I do think it's not in its best shape at the moment in particular. I mean, look at the struggles of Marseille going through 3 managers. Lyon have been a mess this entire year as well. Even Lille, I think, started the season quite poorly by their own standards as well. Brest is still in second place. No disrespect to Brest, but come on, like that just wouldn't happen in another league of the standard of Brest right now. So I think they have done well, and 1 defeat in the league all season. They're a much, much better side than when Christophe Galtier was in charge last season, and given the fact that they lost Messi, Neymar, given the fact they brought in 13 new players, huge respect. But I don't think you can really have them too much higher than 8th.
I've got them 6th, to be fair. I was reacting big, and I hate the club.
I mean, you absolutely despise them. I mean, fair play. I mean, they beat Dortmund at home. They beat Milan at home 3-0 as well. Real Sociedad home and away, who have had a little bit of a dip, unfortunately. And then that Barcelona result, which was hinged on that red card, but at the same time, they did, in a moment where once again the knives were being sharpened, ready to stick the knife in, saying they have flopped once again in the Champions League.
The cleavers ready,
well, exactly, Jonas machete.
Yeah,
but he had to tuck it away. They finished the job, and they finished it in style. And for a side that you're expecting to reach the Champions League final, really, I think they had to be included. But I didn't want them any higher really at the moment either. I think there is some world-class talent in there. Obviously, don't need to talk about Mbappe, but Hakimi's had a great year. Donnarumma domestically has had a great year as well. Ousmane Dembele, I think, has gone under the radar, but there's still some of their signings that haven't been perfect. I think Luis Enrique, given that, has done a pretty good job.
Awesome.
Barker was brilliant. He was brilliant. I thought he was their best player.
I thought he was a game changer almost in the first leg when he came on as well, although it didn't turn out to be. In the second leg, I thought he was the best player on the pitch.
Yeah.
Barker,
I agree.
It was extremely exciting.
You had the mates as well, Mike?
I had the mates as well.
Wow.
Yeah, I think like from 8 above, to be honest, it kind of feel like it's a little, not completely, but a bit more based on who I just think would, who is the best team in general out of all of these.
I think we'll all have exactly the same top 7.
Do you reckon?
I'd be very surprised.
Maybe the same teams, but maybe in different orders.
Different orders, yeah.
No, but I think they're different. I've got PSG at 6. You got them 8.
Oh yeah, but that's what I mean. In top 8, like different order. But like,
you had Bayern at 9.
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing what you're saying. I think what lets PSG down is that, like, yeah, Donnarumma has domestically has bailed them out like massively this season. I think he still has the best post-shot XG in Europe. Like, I think that's where they lose out. It's like, I just think a team slightly better than Barcelona absolutely put them to the sword in the quarterfinals. Like, I just think they're still all over the place defensively, even if I do like the look of them more under Enrique than I have. Probably. Yeah.
Can you see Dortmund beating them?
It's probably the best. It's probably the most fun in some ways PSG team we've seen since the Tuchel era. Yeah, I think Dortmund definitely have a chance against them, like massively have a chance against them for sure. Like, if Dortmund were able to turn the tie around the way that they did against Atleti, then I don't see why not. Like, I don't see why not. I think that semi-final is going to be the one to watch. Like, I think Real Madrid and Bayern Munich could quite easily be quite a boring 2 legs. Just given the way that the two teams play. You've got Tuchel, who is quite a conservative cup manager. You've got Ancelotti, who generally likes to play on the break in big games. Dortmund and PSG are far, far more chaotic. And so, I'm really, really looking forward to that as a semi-final. But yeah, don't have an awful lot more to say on PSG. Like, I still think the midfield still needs work. The attack is still not fully formed, although I echo your thoughts on Ousmane Dembele. I think he has been a really good signing for them, even though he got a lot of stick earlier in the season. Like, his performance over 2 legs against Barcelona was brilliant. But yeah, they just miss out. Like, I've got the team I've got above them in 7th. I just don't think you can have below them, essentially.
I've got Liverpool in 7th.
Yeah, I've got Liverpool in 7th as well. So who have you got in 8th?
The first agreement.
You haven't said who you've got in 8th.
Girona
of course you've got Girona.
Girona in 8th, Liverpool in 7th.
Okay.
Yep.
So I've got Liverpool 7th and Arsenal 6th.
Okay.
So this is where it starts to turn a little bit. So Liverpool, we've all got in 7th.
Yeah.
Like, I think they had an excellent season. They're still well within their chances of winning a Premier League title here, which would be a monstrous achievement. But I think at times they've ridden their luck a little bit. I think in terms of the way I've actually watched them, sometimes the football gets so chaotic and like all over the place that yes, they're Liverpool. Sometimes they just come through games. They've got the firepower to bail them out. But it has left me a little bit concerned for whoever comes in next season, that how much factor is Klopp to this side. Like, I think there are some really good players in there, but I think Klopp is getting an awful lot out of some players that maybe aren't actually at that elite level. And next season, when you remove Klopp from that factor, I'm slightly concerned for Liverpool that some of those players might just drop down 20%, and that 20% drop off could be very, very significant.
It almost feels a little bit like the first 3 years when I think they are in a better place than when Klopp took over, obviously, but it feels a little bit like those first 2-3 seasons under Klopp, where they were actually consistently punching above their weight. You know, before that midfield was really settled, before that defence was really settled with Van Dijk in there. It does feel a little bit like that, and like, you know, massive props to like the likes of Endo and McAllister for really stepping up. But like, I think there is, they are punching above their weight in a few areas. Having said that, the attack generally has been awesome, and before the Jota injury,
poor recently though.
It has been poor recently, but before the Jota injury, like, it was one of the best attacks in Europe. And like, Salah's dropped off. Nunez has, can't finish his dinner again. But like, but generally speaking, I just think it's what separates them from the rest of the teams above them is that they just they've been punching above their weight more, and ultimately, injuries have just played a big factor as well. Like, I think if Liverpool had Trent, Alisson, Jota,
for sure,
fit for the whole season, even Salah fit for the whole season, then they may well be top of the league at this moment in time, and they may well have been more consistent, but that's kind of counted against them as well, the timing of those injuries. But not too much more to say on them otherwise.
Interesting. I think Arsenal are a better side than Liverpool right now, but I think Liverpool have almost had a better season, given the fact where they were at the start of this year. I mean, I think most people...
In terms of expectation,
Arsenal I think most people had them second at the start of this year, and I don't think their points tally...
To be fair to Arsenal, I think, and people are idiots for thinking this, but I remember a lot of people being like, no, they'll drop off massively, they overachieved last year, which wasn't the case.
Wasn't that the Man United fan accounts though? I feel
maybe.
I don't know. I feel like most people had Liverpool, maybe I'm just saying this because I certainly did, like third or fourth, and not in the title race. They've improved by 17 points in the league this year. Arsenal's points tally is worse than at this stage last year, and yes, Arsenal have gone deeper in Europe.
So why don't you have them high then?
Because they are a better team. I was doing it on who is the better team in Europe right now, but the better season I think is Liverpool. I mean, they've already got a Carabao Cup to their name. Arsenal haven't done that well in the cups. Liverpool,
I think that's a good point. I've almost done best seasons here.
Yeah, I've done better. Who's the better team?
Yeah.
I think Arsenal are a better rounded team. They've got a much better defence than Liverpool. But I think who's had a better season, and you're probably looking at Liverpool right now, even though a lot is dependent on what happens tonight. We film this on Thursday. If they take another heavy defeat in Atalanta, which feels very unlikely, that maybe slightly changes my idea again, because, I back them to get a result maybe against Atalanta, but I don't think they'll go through. But if it's another heavy defeat, then I'm taking back my points about them having a better season necessarily, because when it's come down to the crunch, they, like Arsenal, have been found wanting slightly.
Yeah, I mean, the exit to Manchester United and FA Cup, I think, you're not
two draws against United in the league as well.
There for the taking, honestly.
Yeah, 2 draws against United as well. Failed to beat either of their title rivals this season as well.
The worst points return of any team, like the Big Six,
in the top
versus
six,
the rest of the Big Six.
What, lower than United?
Yeah.
Really? This season?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Lower than City, who didn't beat a top 5 team until Villa the other day.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes, to be honest. I think Liverpool have been, that's been their undoing, really. They have come unstuck in some of the big games, and that's uncharacteristic of a Klopp side, but probably characteristic of a side in transition like they are.
Yep.
Should we go 6?
6 is where I've got PSG.
I've got Bayern in 6th.
Okay.
I had Arsenal.
Low.
Arsenal only 6.
I was
too low for me.
I was toying between Arsenal. I can see your notes here. I was toying between Arsenal and Bayern 5th and 6th. I was very close to putting Bayern in 5th, mainly based off the result this week. But I just think across the season, Bayern have been worse than Arsenal.
Definitely.
And I think even though they are the top scorers in Europe's top 5, even though Harry Kane has been brilliant, Leroy Sané I think was the best right-sided forward in the world in the first half of the season, less so in the second half. But there are a number of standout performances, but it's just the defence. The Bayern defence is so much worse than Arsenal's. I think also the capitulation in so many domestic games. I just don't think you can excuse that, compared to the teams above them who have maybe had 1 or 2 blips this season, but nowhere near as many as Bayern.
I'm surprised you two have got Bayern so high. I can't lie.
I mean, who is the better team this season? Again, I did on who is the better team this season, and we've just seen them in 2 games. And I think Bayern were comfortable winners.
Yeah, they were in one-off games on the night, but the better team this season across.
But they were missing
20 or so games this season. They've
players.
been poor.
Yeah, I mean, particularly in some of the sort of games that you wouldn't expect them to lose in the Bundesliga. I think they've lost to Werder Bremen, they've lost to Heidenheim.
But they were shocking against Leverkusen.
They've also lost to Dortmund at home. It hasn't been a good season domestically. I'm not going to pretend it hasn't been. But I think it's mainly at key points been their finishing that's kind of let them down, and moments of just kamikaze defending, which has kind of been their problem for a number of years. They've had so much turnover behind the scenes as well. They're a much less settled side than Arsenal, and yet they made it look quite comfortable.
And they also have I think they also have a very realistic shot at the Champions League as well. I wouldn't be massively surprised if they beat Real in the semis.
6 and 5. I'm happy with Arsenal being above
Arsenal
Bayern.
5, to be fair.
You didn't have them that much, huh?
Nah, but I had Bayern 4 places lower in 9th.
Fair. I feel like we've talked. Who does everyone have in there? Who does everyone have 4? Because I think this is where it goes.
Same. I've got Inter as well.
I have Man City
4th.
Lower than Inter.
Yeah.
You had City 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
No,
I think that's really harsh.
I think before last night,
just based on the squad alone,
they absolutely battered Madrid for 120 minutes. Just couldn't get the ball in the net. They were on for back-to-back trebles, and we would probably have had them 1, if not 2. I think that Man City as a team are still the best team in Europe. They are still the best team in Europe, even though they went out to Real Madrid last night. The performance was nothing short of magnificent. Basically, they just couldn't get the ball in the bloody net. It was at one stage in the second half, I couldn't physically remember the last time Madrid had been out of their own half. So many good performances out there, but let down by some poor finishing in big moments, and then a penalty shootout that was quite frankly awful from Manchester City's players. But as a team unit, like, I was going to have them at number 1, but I just think that because they've got out of the Champions League, you've kind of got to drop them down a little bit. Like, I don't know how you can have them that low.
Yeah, 4th is really low, man.
I had them that low because I just...
Inter.
Yeah, it's the same thing that we're seeing with Salah. It's the same thing we're seeing with Haaland. We know the levels they can hit, and they've just been nowhere near it this year, I don't think, City. If I'm totally honest, I think it's if this side had won the treble, it really wouldn't have reflected very well on the Premier League.
You've just picked Bayern over Arsenal because of that one-off game where they've beaten them, blah, blah, blah.
Well, exactly. That's why I've got City lower than Real Madrid, for example.
City, across the course of the season, your argument was that Arsenal across the course of the season have like done really well. City across the course of the season might have had flaky moments, but as a unit, they have been the best team in the Premier League.
I think, of course, you're like...
Also,
your opinion is changed by what you've seen from them previously. And yes, they are going against impossible to match standards. You know, this is a team that's got 100 points. You know, they're going for 4 consecutive Premier Leagues. They were going for a 2nd consecutive treble. I just think they are worse in defence this year. I think they made real big midfield recruitment errors, and I think they also sold some players that would have been really handy to them going forward.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel, when I watch City, I don't feel like they've clicked yet this season. I don't, and we've got to April, and yes, they played really well against Real Madrid, and they on the basis of chances created, etc., they should have won that game. KDB missed that huge chance, but there weren't that many clear-cut opportunities, and I don't think they have been at their best, particularly in the Premier League this year. I think they've actually been by far the best side in the Champions League, but I think their Premier League performances have been quite lacking, if I'm totally honest.
Defensively, they have been poor.
But is that comparatively to their own standards?
I think it is. I think it is, and that's probably maybe I've got them too low.
Yeah, but I don't think you can have.
I also wanted to reward Inter Milan. I mean, we might as well get on to Inter Milan.
But I mean, Inter like go out in the Champions League last 16. Don't make it to the latter stages of the Coppa Italia as well. Have been immense. Like that's why I've got them 4th.
Some of the
have been immense.
By expected goals in Europe.
Sorry, what Inter?
Inter.
Yeah, I mean Lautaro's been on absolute flames, hasn't he? But
12-point swing on expected points they've got.
They've still got the best. They've still got the best defence in. I think it's the best defence in Europe. I think they've got the 2nd best attack in Europe. They've only lost 1 game, and that was in September. I think this Inter Milan side have gone under the radar. Yes, they're probably not 14 points better than Milan, as a lot of Milan fans were telling me on Twitter this week. They've got some refereeing decisions that have gone their way, but they've been one of the outstanding teams in Europe. Yeah, 3rd or 4th. I'm happy with either. I had them 3rd.
They're also unbeaten away from home. They've only dropped 4 points away from home in the league this season.
Big errors was in the first leg of that. Atleti tie, wasn't it? I mean, Atleti didn't have a shot on target.
It's mad. Like it is actually mad how Atleti beat Inter in the round of 16. Like Inter, like I think on the basis of their foot should be really Champions League semi-finalists this year. I think if they beat Atleti, I think they go into the obviously go into the quarterfinals against Borussia Dortmund as favourites.
I think they could have reached another final.
They definitely could have. Obviously. But I think that's where they let themselves down. They for Simone Inzaghi's side, they have not been good enough in the cup competitions this year.
Which is mad.
Yeah. That's why I have them in 4th.
Did you have them 4th as well, Joe?
Yeah. I had them 4th, and I had Manchester City 3rd.
Okay. Ooh, I had Real Madrid 3rd, actually.
I've got Madrid in 2nd, just because I think, look at their La Liga performance, and whilst it has been up and down, they've still only lost 1 game.
Yeah, I know.
In the league.
And only lost twice all season.
It hasn't been vintage Real Madrid, but I think you look at Real Madrid and you think, pre-season, we were all saying this is a real team in transition here, Real Madrid. Don't have a number 9. Hoslu's come through the door. Then they've picked up significant injuries. Courtois double ACL, Militao ACL, Alaba ACL. Basically an unprecedented amount of ACL injuries to a back 3 unit that includes a goalkeeper. And they've lost 1 game in the league. They've gone to Manchester City and somehow got a result there, playing very attritional style of football, if we're honest. But Carlo came out after the game and he kind of said, look, this is the only way you can beat Man City. This is the only way we could get a result against Man City. They'd obviously looked at what Arsenal did there when they went there and effectively played in that sort of low block formation and replicated it. I think hats off to the unit he's managed to put out on that team, which is kind of ramshackle. Jude Bellingham playing is almost like a false 9, and then Nacho's playing again at centre back. Tchouameni was playing as a centre back in the first leg, and he's able to beat and take points in both legs off of what we would classically say is the best team in Europe. I think that is an underrated skill of Carlo Ancelotti, and I know that they are going to win La Liga, so for me they're the favourites to win the Champions League. I think they're going to probably do a double here, and I think if you have them any lower than 2nd,
I don't know, man.
Nobody else other than Leverkusen is going to do this level.
I have them third. I just don't.
If they win a European double, you're going to have them.
Well, no, but they haven't done that yet, have they? And they still might not win La Liga. Like if I don't expect them to. But like if they lose El Clasico, then they're only 5 points clear with a few games to go. Like
still a long way with Barcelona.
Of course, it's still a long way. But given, I think yes. Injuries and defence, and given how good their defence has been this season despite those injuries, is really, really impressive. Like I think, Ancelotti has, his ability to turn this Real Madrid side into such a solid defensive unit has been super, super impressive. But having said that, in terms of a title race this season, I think this has been one of the weakest La Liga seasons we've seen in a long, long time, given how Barcelona and Atleti just weren't really in it for the majority of the campaign. I think in that sense, they've had a bit of an easy ride of it. And also early in the season were quite lucky to come through a lot of games, bailing them out on a number of occasions. I just think compared to City, who have also had, let's remember, some serious injury problems, like Haaland, De Bruyne and Stones all missing. I think Stones in some ways the most important of those. We saw how much Akanji has struggled, in that Stones role in his absence, which he's had to play a lot this season. And I think that's been okay. I think I put that down actually to Pep, to be honest. I don't see why he persists with Akanji in that role when he's been caught out so many times this season. But nevertheless, it also speaks volumes as to how much they miss Stones and how important he is to their system. For them to be looking now heavy favourites to win the Premier League in one of the most, in maybe the most competitive Premier League title race ever in terms of a 3-horse race, at least the most competitive since 2013-14. I think that's that makes the difference for me, and they probably will win the FA Cup as well.
But is it competitive?
Actually, I say that they've played Chelsea yesterday. Maybe they're out of the FA Cup, but like going into this weekend, they're heavy favourites for the FA Cup.
But is the Premier League title race competitive because they have been 8 out of 10 of their usual standard? I feel like the fact that they haven't taken any points off Arsenal and Liverpool has opened it up.
But Arsenal have been brilliant this season, though.
I agree. But City hadn't beaten a side in the top 5 until they played Aston Villa 3 weeks ago. They haven't been at their best this year domestically, and I do think that's got to come into it.
But again, if we look at, yes, they did lose to Real Madrid in the end, but like you look at,
they were the better side definitely at home. But I think they were pretty fortunate to draw 3-3 away. Real caused a number of issues.
It's true.
They did, but I just think they are overall I think they're still a level above Real. I think they're still a level above Real when you look across that squad.
I suppose this comes down to the eternal better team versus better season.
It does, yeah.
And I've kind of changed my narrative because I was originally saying better team, but actually Real Madrid have had a better season.
Do you honestly think Madrid aren't going to win the league from this position?
No, I think they probably will, but like they haven't. Their cup performance domestically, obviously didn't win the Copa del Rey. I don't know whether they'll win the I don't know. If they win the Champions League, then then it probably changes. Obviously, it changes because they're European champions. But I just think that the Champions League is impossible to call. Like I think it's really impossible to call. I genuinely think 3 out of those 4 have a very good shout. And who knows if Dortmund makes it to the final? Who knows on the night? But yeah, I just think Man City are better. Okay,
so that's 3 and 2. So that means we've all got the same number 1, right? We've all got Leverkusen.
Leverkusen.
I mean, this is the easiest shout ever, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, again, are they the best team? It's very impossible to say. But how can you not have the number 1 when they've gone 43 games unbeaten? I think the record in European competition was set by Benfica in 1963-65, and it was 48 games in all competitions across 2 seasons. So they are close to achieving a feat that has never been done. And yes, people will say, they've only played in the Europa League, but if they win the Europa League as well, they'd have beaten West Ham, who aren't to be sniffed at in terms of European competition the last couple of years. Semi-finalists in the Europa League, won the Conference League last year. They'll then have to beat Roma or Milan. Milan reached the Champions League semi-final last year. Roma are doing really well under De Rossi. And then from the other side of the draw, it looks like it's probably going to be unlikely to be Liverpool. But the final could be quite straightforward. But it's not an easy run whatsoever.
They could win
and they've done this when they could win a treble. It's not the treble. I'm quite a stickler for
it's
this.
a treble though.
It is a treble. It is 3 trophies. And it is remarkable. You know, we don't need to talk about it again, but Xabi Alonso taking over in the relegation zone. They lost Moussa Diaby, one of their best players in the summer. The reinvestment of Xhaka, Grimaldo, Boniface, it was pretty faultless, really. And no one saw this coming to this extent, at least anyway. And I think they've been absolutely outstanding. Can win. I think they'll definitely win the DFB Pokal against Kaiserslautern, and hopefully they win the Europa League as well and do something that might never be topped again. I see him going entirely unbeaten.
And it's also the way they're doing it. It's not like doggy football, is it? It's like so good to watch. So many goals, such high quality. The abundance of wing-back play from Frimpong, Grimaldo, and the goal involvements they've been able to put up this season. I think, you know, like, the funnest thing I think about this Leverkusen team is that I actually don't see them getting picked apart in the summer. You know,
not now Xabi's staying.
I agree. I think since, you know, you classically would see a Dortmund or something go really far, or a smaller team win Liga, and suddenly the scavengers are out, the whole team's been picked apart. I think with Leverkusen, with Florian Wirtz on the long-term contract, with Xabi agreeing to stay, I think they'll probably keep hold of 95% of that squad. I think maybe Frimpong will leave just because of that 30 million buyout clause, which I think is very, very low, and there'll be a lot of interested parties, although he's kind of going to have to be a wing-back system.
That's the thing,
Difficult to be into man or something. For, isn't it? But if he does go, I don't see many other players going. Like, I definitely don't see a Boniface going, a Wirtz going, a Xhaka going. I don't see a Grimaldo going. He's under a long-term contract as well. That's the best thing they can do.
I think even if one or two key players were to leave, Wirtz would probably be the biggest loss.
He's not going anywhere.
He's not for now, and you still back them to replace them. Like, you still back them to work something out there. I think that's what sets this Leverkusen team apart from any other side in Europe this season. Is just that, basically from front to back, everyone's had the season of their life. Like, everyone's just had the season of their life. Like, it's hard to look at any of these players. Like, obviously, you talked about Frimpong and Grimaldo, but Boniface up top, Jonas Hoffmann, like Palacios, like the defensive solidity in that team is amazing as well. Like, I think we were talking about it on Monday. Like, I can't remember the last time. Like, it does remind me a bit of Pep's Barca, like the kind of high possession style, but as a defensive tactic. Is just amazing. I guess the only other team you can compare them to stylistically maybe is Inzaghi's Inter in terms of like a high possession 3 at the back system. But they've just been so good, and they've ridden out storms as well. There have been periods where they've not played so well, but like when they've been at their best, it's just been immense. And you know, like the takedown of Bayern Munich, you know, the switch to a more counter-attacking style of play in order to put them to the sword in what was I think the game that really sealed the title. Looking back on it, is just amazing. And for such a young manager to have, or a manager so early in his top level career to have achieved that is something else. Yeah,
and it's also, we talked about their recruitment, we talked about their style, but also the mentality. Like, this is a club defined by losing. They are Leverkusen.
Yeah.
You know, they threw away a treble in 2 weeks in 4 games in 2002. You know, they hadn't won a trophy since 1993. We think Spurs are defined by losing. Yeah. They won one 15 years after Leverkusen. And Leverkusen are just the laughingstock, or previously were, of German football in terms of getting over the line. Imagine Spurs winning a treble
unbeaten
out of nowhere under a manager that took over when they were 17th. It is one of the most remarkable, if not the most remarkable, football stories of the last 10 years. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Leverkusen as well. Like, I was watching back the highlights of their first leg against West Ham in the Europa League, and I can't remember who was on comms, but there was one moment where I can't remember who. It was one of many Fabianski saves in that first game. They should have absolutely trounced them, to be honest. But the commentator says, like almost like Freudian slip, says Leverkusen. Like, that's how ingrained that kind of element of their history is in the popular imagination. So yeah, I mean,
Leverkusen no more.
Yeah. They're
number one, aren't they? They're clearly number one. So that was our top 10 list. Why don't you let us know your top 10 lists in the comments below? I think we got a bit best seasons versus best teams there, but nevertheless it kind of shook out.
I think it's good to have a bit of a mix of it, right? Like, I think there's got to be a bit of a mix.
I think so as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe to Football Daily. Thanks very much for watching. See you later. Bye bye.